Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Exceptional Stories and the People Who Live Them. Your host is Steve Dover, a special needs advocate and father of 2 special needs sons. This is a faith-based, in-depth conversation-styled podcast with and for parents of special needs children. This podcast will let you have a front row seat to hear how they do it, why they do it, and what you can learn from their experiences as they share their exceptional stories. Let's get started.
Thank you for listening to Exceptional Stories and the People Who Live Them. We hope you've been enjoying the inspiring tales and remarkable individuals we've had the privilege to feature on our show. Your support means the world to us, and here's a simple way you can help us continue to bring you these exceptional stories. If you found value in this episode, please leave us a 5-star rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform. Be sure to include the episode number or guest name in your review. These ratings and reviews boost our visibility and allow more people to discover the incredible stories we share. Plus, it lets us know that you're enjoying the content and find it valuable. So take a moment right now to leave that 5-star rating wherever you listen to our show. Your feedback fuels our passion to keep bringing you these exceptional stories. Thank you for being a part of our podcast community. Stay tuned for more heartwarming and extraordinary stories in the weeks to come.
I have with me today on the podcast Jacob Malone. He is from Fort Payne, Alabama. We'll be talking about his daughter, Nora Rose, and talking about her journey with a diagnosis and what God has allowed her to do and where they're at in that journey right now. Jacob, glad to have you on here, man. Good to see you after a long, long while.
Yeah, man. Good to see you again. Good to talk about Nora. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're always happy to talk about our kids, aren't we?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. Jacob and I worked together when I first moved up here to North Alabama, and then he left and took a teaching job, and now he's teaching at the college level, teaching history. But during our work involvements, when I first heard about Nora and the things going on with her, so Jacob, if you would just briefly share with our listeners about Nora, what was her diagnosis and how you guys processed that very early on.
Yeah, absolutely. So Nora is my wife and I. My wife's name is Katie, who would probably be better at all of this than I am as far as a witness to Nora. But Nora was our first child. And so we had not been married very long at all. We just celebrated our 9th anniversary just last week. And let's see, Nora is 6 now, so hadn't been married for too awful long. Mm-hmm. And just started out like a normal pregnancy, and we're excited. And it was actually when we were going out to find the gender that the actual visit itself found out it was a girl. Was super excited. Nothing abnormal to us. But called back later, and of course, I'm sure there's good reason for this, but the lady who was doing the actual scan couldn't tell us during that she saw a cleft palate. She had to wait and let the doctor, I guess, or somebody, look at it. Mm-hmm. And so she reached out to us, or they reached out to us and said, "Hey, we noticed a cleft palate in the scan. You are young and healthy. It's probably, people have cleft palates, or cleft lip stuff like that pretty often." And so at that point, that's all it was. And so we were sent to the maternal and fetal medicine clinic at UAB to get like an anatomy scan. Mm-hmm. And so when we were there, they noticed Nora's heart looked abnormal, like it had a hole in it, her brain. And so they did like a blood panel.
Okay.
And had that done. Knew there was a little bit more to it and those kind of things. My wife is a speech pathologist and deals with special needs kids, and had already at that point. And we didn't know anything about trisomy 13 yet, but she was aware of genetic disorders and things, and she was already kind of concerned, to the best of my memory, about some of those things. As much as we knew, we were still hopeful not to think, it kind of, things kind of bleed over because you look back on it now with all the knowledge you have. At the time, we didn't know much. But
sure. Yeah.
What happens is about 2 weeks later, and I was at Polymer working with you when that happened. I don't know if you were there yet, actually, but I was there at work, and my wife called me, and she had got a call from the clinic with the results of the test, and asked if it was a good time. Of course, it probably wasn't. Katie was at work, but was dying to know. Said yeah, and Nora was 99% positive for trisomy 13, and the woman on the line said that all Katie could remember hearing was the phrase "incompatible with life." Most did not make it to 1 year. And then she started giving Katie abortion cutoffs in Alabama and some of the surrounding states, and when their abortion cutoffs were. So that was pretty much the immediate recommendation was abortion.
Okay. Before we get too far, let our listeners that may not be familiar with that terminology, what is trisomy 13?
Yeah, well, that was when we heard
why does it affect her like it does?
Yeah, so that was the first time we had heard it too. So that was kind of what I was getting to. So we get told that, and we of course start researching and things. And so it's also called Patau syndrome. So trisomy 13 means that the 13th chromosomal pair has 3 instead of 2. So for instance, like Down syndrome is trisomy 21. Trisomy 13 and 18 are similar in some ways, and usually you hear them mentioned together. It's also called Patau syndrome. It's like 1 in 10 to 25,000 of live-born infants that are diagnosed with that. It's we probably some miscarriages and things could be attributed to that too if we knew more. But as far as children are born, super rare. You can have full trisomy, meaning it affects all your cells. Probably about 80% of infants that are born with it have full trisomy 13. Then you can have like translocation, mosaic, where it affects you less. We didn't know at the time, so we didn't know what it was going to affect. But essentially, whenever you have those 3 chromosomes in your 13th, that's throughout all the cells in your body, so it can affect a variety of things. Some of the most common things, heart defects are really common, like a small head, small eyes, brain abnormalities, cleft lip and palate, which is what they saw. Extra digits. Nora was born with 6 fingers on each hand. It can just affect, kind of goes throughout your whole system, affecting things. Okay. And so, so we started learning all that. Of course, Katie had heard, incompatible with life, abortion. So, we grieved and all those kinds of things, but didn't know, like I said, whether it was full trisomy, which is usually a little bit more severe than like the mosaic or the versions where it doesn't affect everything. Didn't know those things yet. And so the recommendation was to get something called amniocentesis, where they put like they'd actually like insert a needle into the stomach, and they would test that way more directly. And that would make it 100%, but there's a very small chance that it would hurt the child when you do that procedure. And so we had decided we weren't going to abort because of our faith. We didn't believe in abortion. And so we weren't going to anyway. So we decided that, we're going to have this child anyway. We're going to be praying for her. And so we're not going to do anything at risk for her. If she's born with it, she's born with it. And so we asked them, not that we were being unrealistic, 99% she was. So we asked, they had a care plan together. We worked with them on that. And so, so most of the pregnancy, think about if people are listening and, they've went and had the anatomy scan where they see if it's a boy or a girl, basically in a few weeks of that through the end of the pregnancy. Wow. We knew she had trisomy 13.
I saw in an interview that you guys did, I think it was back in 2020. You said after you found out everything and you processed everything, and you said abortion's not an option. If she'll go full term, we'll go full term. But your goal was to bring her home. Yeah. Your goal was to just hold her and bring her home.
Yeah, that was my prayer the whole time, was just let me meet her. I really, we debated things, which now looking back, there's no judgment in any of these things for any parents that go through this. Now looking back, I'm not, I'm glad we made the decision we did, and I'm surprised we kind of waffled for so long. But, we even went back and forth on where we're going to decorate a nursery or not. Not because we didn't expect her to come home, but we thought if she didn't, it would be too painful to come home to a nursery. And
Yeah.
Some things like that. But yeah, we wound up getting everything ready. And yeah, that was always my prayer, was just that I would get to meet her, I'd get to hold her.
Mm-hmm.
And there was actually a man who worked at the place we worked at together before you were there, who had a child with trisomy 18.
Okay.
And that was kind of their experience, was they got to hold her in the room.
Yeah.
And once I was at an appropriate time, he was really kind. He kind of shared that with me later on, or maybe actually I'd heard elements of that story, maybe from him before we even knew about Nora. But anyway, that was in my mind, was, I just want to meet her, want to hold her.
Yeah. Well, how you ran a list of things that are common with children with this diagnosis. What after Nora was born and you see her, what are some of the challenges that are starting to develop that you guys are having to deal with?
Yeah, so we knew from the anatomy scan that the brain and the heart were abnormal. And when the heart's abnormal, you expect there to be like breathing issues and things like that. So like the night so Katie actually, I forget now, I think it was maybe, 37 weeks. I told Katie that we were going for a checkup, and I kept telling Katie, I was like, I think we're going to have her today. And sure enough, it was bad circumstances though. Katie had preeclampsia, so she had high blood pressure and stuff. And so she had to be induced. And so we actually had a few hours that she was being induced kind of leading up to the moment. And so we had a doctor come in one kind of last time before we kind of started pushing in those things and just say, hey, here's what to expect, But there's kind of a standby team in the room, and we expect when she's born to have to rush her out of the room. And so kind of the thing is, they're like, we're going as hard as we can. You just follow us, right? So Katie's going to obviously still be there recovering, and I'm just going to follow him. So the first thing I remember is them saying she had red hair. Neither of us do. They said she has red hair. And
wow.
Yeah. And they got her out, and I can remember we stillborn or what. And I can remember Katie crying and saying, why is it taking her so long to cry or to make a noise? And it was. And finally she lets out this kind of faint cry, and I'm pretty sure it was against all the regulations, but like our entire family was right outside the door, and we just heard this big cheer from the kind of the hallway as they could hear through the door cry. But they process immediately, and the nurses are all jumping on her and throwing oxygen on and doing all the things, and they rushed pretty much like they said. They probably knocked our families over getting out the door and rushing down the hall, and I'm running with her, and they got her in there. She was, looking back, it's hard to, I would say she was stable. I would walk out in the hall and just kind of sob, and then I would walk back in the room, and just try to, kind of look at her and stuff. And needed oxygen, saw the 6 fingers, things like that, labored breathing. And so, it was she was born on October the 14th. Katie's birthday is the 15th.
Wow.
And, she came off oxygen on Katie's birthday. So she actually came off oxygen the next day, but really labored breathing, a lot of like dips in her oxygen levels and stuff.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, Exceptional Stories family. We've got something very exciting to share. We want to put the spotlight on you. If you're a special needs parent or caregiver, we want to hear your questions for an upcoming Q&A episode. Send in your questions via email to exceptionalstoriespodcast@gmail.com or leave us a 90-second voice message at speakpipe.com/exceptionalstoriespodcast. We're diving deep into the most common pain points faced by special needs parents, and your input will shape this crucial conversation. I can't wait to hear from you. Let's make this Q&A episode truly exceptional. Okay. So that she defied the odds, first of all, just by surviving birth, by living that first day.
Yeah.
So now let's go down the road a little bit. I was working with you, I think, when she had the cleft palate surgery.
Yeah. So a little bit later on. Yeah. So she stayed NICU for 2 weeks. And NICU was a frustrating experience, and we learned a lot about what life was going to be like, kind of advocating for her, because like her oxygen, we had a neonatologist come in at one point in the NICU and say, like, her oxygen not holding up. That's just the nature of the trisomy. And we're like, trisomy doesn't make you not take breaths. Trisomy either makes your lungs not work right, your heart, like it affects your organs. Like there is like a physical, empirical reason that she's not breathing. It's not just trisomy. That's like, that's like saying, well, you can't taste because you have a cold. I mean, I guess that's true in some sense, but it's because the cold has affected your nasal passages and you're so stuffed up that it's affecting your taste buds. I mean, yes, the thing you have is what kind of makes you have symptoms, but you treat the symptoms. You don't, you don't say, well, if we can't do anything because you have a cold. Well, no, we'll treat the symptoms. And so, yes, she has trisomy, but the thing is, like, her heart's not working right. When other people have hearts that don't work right, we try to fix their hearts. And so just a kind of a waiting for her to die, stop feeling it at times. And I don't want to sound over dramatic because not everybody was like that, but there was kind of this general consensus of this is just what happens. This is what it's like. Yeah. And so in that 2-week NICU stay, we learned how bad the heart was. So she had a giant hole, called a VSD between two of the chambers of her heart that essentially let blood come in through, like, to her lungs and stuff, making it hard to breathe. So blood would flow between the lower chambers and fluid would build up. And we found out she had to have heart surgery. We also found out during that time she couldn't really open her eyes all the way. She had really small eyes, which, like I said, microphthalmia is common, underdeveloped eyes. We found out at that time that her left eye was just like a cyst, so it has no function. And we didn't know about her right eye yet. It was a little bit more developed. We now know she can see light, and she loves light and light up toys and stuff. She couldn't feed because she had a bilateral cleft lip and palate, so like she had to get a G-tube put in. So there was some kind of, along those 2 weeks, we got a G-tube, we found out about her eyes, found out more about her heart, kind of these discoveries happening.
I got you.
But us the whole time kind of saying, we want to intervene, we want to treat the things that are affecting her. And that eventually kind of became, well, that's going to mean heart surgery. That's going to be what you have to have. And I don't know how much you want me to go into that process, but that was the biggest fight we had to fight as far as advocating for.
Well, that was one of my questions, and we can go ahead and address it now as far as being an advocate for her. I have been in the room when the doctors have told us, I don't know what we're going to do, or I don't know what to do. And I've also seen doctors and felt like they have given up and they just, they're just waiting on, quote unquote, nature to take its course.
Yeah.
So how did you become that advocate for her? I realize as being dad, you didn't have a choice, but as soon as you saw her, you wanted to fight for her. I know that.
Yeah. Well, our decision early on was like, and we told her that when she got her heart surgery. I can remember telling her before so Children's Hospital in Alabama, everybody knows the bubble wall. There's a wall where you have to leave your kid when they have surgery, and it's got bubbles all over it. And that's kind of where you have to part ways with them as they go back. And I can remember telling Nora, she was just a few months old, I can remember telling her, like, if you're too tired, you can go. You can go on home if you're too tired. You don't have to stay. So, we were always kind of prepared that we were going to fight for her if it seemed like she wanted us to fight for her, but if, we weren't interested in her just living and suffering. But that said, that's kind of our gauge was, well, a typical child, if they couldn't breathe because their heart was messed up, we would try to fix their heart. And so we were going to try that unless anything changed. And so we started advocating for that. And Children's Cardiology Department was really supportive. The cardiologist was supportive. The cardiac surgeon was supportive. The head of the PICU, the pediatric intensive care unit where she would have went after, he wasn't as on board with it. Now, I will say this: I didn't meet anybody that I didn't feel like was coming from a place of goodwill. I can sincerely say that. Like, I met people that I thought, this is what you were taught in school, that trisomy 13 kids die. And you're right, like 90% of the time too. So, I never met anybody that I felt like was just hoping my daughter died, didn't care. I mean, they all seemed like they were coming from a place of goodwill. So he wasn't unkind, but, he was just saying things like, you're just prolonging her suffering. I've seen too much hurt when this isn't successful. And children's met about Nora. Department heads of children's met about her, I think on Fridays. I forget for how many weeks. They would have departmental meetings about her, about whether or not they were going to do surgery. And we had to meet with all the department heads that were involved kind of one-on-one to essentially convince them is what it felt like. When they finally did it, she had to gain weight. She had to do some things to be able to do it. And she finally could. And at 3 months old, she goes in for the repairs. And I can remember we went into you get called into a room if it goes well or bad. You get called into this little room, and the doctors walked in, and kind of the fellows and the people that were under him walked in too. And actually a guy I graduated with who probably wasn't supposed to be in that surgery in retrospect if they'd have known. He knew us. I had no idea he was in there, and he may not have known. I'm not trying to I just mean, like, looking back, I'm surprised that he was, in there. But he walked in behind the doctor with thumbs up, looking at me, so there's just this wave of relief. And successful repair. We were there for about a week and a half in recovery. That guy that was over the PICU, he walked in and he said, "Wow, she looks better in person than she does on paper." And that was the thing, it was like, you've got to treat all these kids individually. And that was what our big advocacy became for, was like, treat, don't just look at diagnosis, and prognosis and diagnosis are important and they exist for a reason, but you don't look at those things and just make an assumption about their life. They're individuals. We want to treat them all individually. And we've learned a lot about that since. I don't know how much you want to get into it, but Katie actually was active, and she got a bill passed here in Alabama, kind of in line with that. The kids are treated.
Well, let's take a quick break, and then let's come back and tell us about that, because I know folks will be interested in that. And then I've got a couple more questions here when we wrap up. So we'll be back here in just a minute on Exceptional Stories and the People Who Live Them.
We hope you are enjoying this week's episode of Exceptional Stories and the People Who Live Them. If you would like to support our podcast to help it improve and be heard around the world, we have created a way you can do just that. Go to the podcast website at exceptionalstoriespodcast.com and click the support button on the homepage. For as little as $3 per month, you can help keep this podcast available. There will be no pressure, and you can stop anytime you choose. So go to the show website now, exceptionalstoriespodcast.com, and click the support button now to help. We look forward to hearing from you soon.
All right, we are back with Jacob Malone here on this episode of Exceptional Stories and the People Who Live Them, talking about his he and Katie's 6-year-old daughter, Nora, and her life with Trisomy 13 and the things that have gone on with her. She just defied the odds by being born, and then has been a fighter since day one, and is doing good. We've had a heart surgery, and right before we went to the break, Jacob, you were saying about Katie's involvement in getting a bill passed here in our home state of Alabama. Tell the folks about that and the significance of this bill.
Yeah, well, I want to give credit where it's due. So it's called Simon's Law, and it's named after Simon. Simon, I haven't pronounced his last name, Crozier, I think, from Missouri. So Katie actually, I don't know if she was reached out to or how she found out about it, but Simon's story, and simonslaw.org is where his story is at. He was a young boy born with trisomy 18, which we've mentioned, is similar to 13.
Yeah.
And they were waiting on a heart surgery, as a matter of fact. I don't think he ever went home. I don't want to misspeak. I'm kind of speaking for another family here, but I don't think he ever got to go home. Okay. I think they were coming to visit him at the hospital, and he was basically staying in the NICU. Mm-hmm. But his oxygen levels were failing, and there was no urgency. And essentially they were told, like, this is the end. Nothing can be done. And I'm not speaking for them. Their story's online on simonslaw.org. But essentially what happens is they find out afterwards that there was a DNR in Simon's chart, and they never gave consent to that and was unaware of it, which was perfectly legal in the state of Missouri, and is legal in most states, even to this day, is my understanding. And so she fought, I think, for 5 years to get Simon's Law passed in Missouri. I think it actually passed like in Kansas or Kentucky before it even passed in her home state of Missouri. Okay. But yeah, Katie reached out in 2019. She found out about this. And of course, Nora would have fit in that category. And though we experienced nothing like that, I mean, we did have that feeling I mentioned of kind of like people just, this is the nature of this, prognosis and diagnosis.
Right.
And so Katie reached out to our local representative, Nathaniel Ledbetter, in 2019. They moved really quickly, but then COVID hit in the middle of the 2020 session. So it was actually the next session in 2021. But in May of 2021, Simon's Law was unanimously passed in Alabama. And so the synopsis basically prohibits any healthcare facility or professional or anything from instituting a DNR, a do not resuscitate order, without the written or oral consent of at least one parent. So Katie's a rock star. Like I said, she's the one that's impressive, that deserves a lot of praise as far as advocacy and things. But yeah, I mean, that speaks to that piece. And it worried us. It's always worried us. Katie came from a therapy world. She was a speech pathologist that worked with special needs children. How many parents probably have no idea about these things, and not because they're unintelligent or uneducated or anything else, just because they don't know. Why would you know? Yeah.
And they don't know to ask and don't know to check.
Yes. And you hope the social worker does that, but they're probably helping 100 people at once. And it's scary. So legislation's important for sure.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. I try to ask this to all my parents, and you can be as transparent on this question as you choose to be. There's no right or wrong answer or no right or wrong way to do it. But what has been the most difficult part of raising Nora with trisomy 13?
I don't know. It's changed.
Has it been the physical part of it, seeing her in these different stages, or has it been the medical part, advocating for her, or what? What's been the most
phases? Like the thing we've described so far, which is just really the first 3 or 4 months of her life. I mean, she's 6 now. That was all medical, and it was hard to watch, and it was awful. Maybe have open heart surgery and those kind of things. And then leading up to the heart surgery, we would take shifts watching her sleep because it was so labored, and would have it was so definitely started out. That was the hardest part, just what you were saying. And after that, it was watching her struggle and not develop normally and things, I suppose. But I mean, she's so happy and smiley. What quickly happened, Nora now has 2 younger siblings. And we have a full family of people running around doing things. I'm gonna be really honest, and I hope that doesn't make us sound selfish. And I'm not speaking for Katie, I speak for myself here. But maybe it relieves the anxiety of some parents that may be in similar situations. I think now one of the hardest things is logistics. I think now one of the hardest things is, how are we going to get all the kids there? Nora's wheelchair. Are we ever going to have a date the rest of our life? Now, obviously, there's scares. Nora has seizures now, which is pretty new. Every trisomy 13 kid we've ever known has had seizures that's lived, so we're not surprised by it. But, not to say there's never anything medical, but compared to that early crisis stage, we joke, she's our lowest maintenance kid. She's the happiest, easiest to deal with kid we have. A lot of that has subsided unless something's happening in the moment. And when you're not in those kind of crisis moments, it is. I mean, a lot of times the hard part's just figuring out how to get everybody to the soccer game, or who's going to keep Nora to do this, or what are the ages of the others now? Rhett is her younger brother, and he's 5. And then Sophie is her younger sister, and she's 2. She'll be 3 next month. Okay. All right. Well, the flip side of that question I always ask is this: what has been the most rewarding part so far of raising Nora? I believe in kind of these big buzzwords we say, like the inherent dignity of the person, and these kind of theological and philosophical things we throw around. But there's a face on those things now. Nora has inherent dignity. She's made in the image of God. She is an image bearer. She'll never contribute anything to society economically or politically or socially in some ways, according to how you measure that. But has exactly the same amount of value as somebody who'll do all those things. So that's awesome to watch. I would say for me, we worried about having more kids because we worried it would take away our focus from Nora.
Yeah.
That's still something we think about. Like if we did have more, or if anything changed, like that's all. Like she needs all this attention. Every sibling Nora has is a better person because Nora is their sister. They're just Rhett's so empathetic. He's older. Sophie's still kind of, learning and understanding.
Yeah.
Rhett's a 5-year-old who just has never seen a kid that looked weird to him. I mean, his sister doesn't have eyes, had a cleft lip that's been repaired but looks abnormal. Rhett, that doesn't register. Little kids with such sweetness and tenderness will look at Nora in public and just be like, what is going on? And, with such innocence that kids have. And Rhett, he just doesn't, that's not a thing. And, he is her favorite person on earth, and just he talks in a high-pitched voice to her like your baby talking to somebody. He only does that with her. He knows what she likes. He loves on her and wrestles with her, and so watching her, like seeing what I said all that earlier, and I hope it didn't sound callous. I was trying to make a point from how society views her, but for anybody that would argue she doesn't bring something to the world, she like just how much she's impacted her siblings and her family, as well as just people that, the public that get to her as well.
Well, living where I live, and we're all technically in the same community, and I have seen the community team up with you guys and support her and support you guys. And I think that is vitally important for the parents. My wife and I are parents, 2 special needs children. Have 1 special needs grandson now, and so we know what it's like to be able to have somebody to talk to and somebody to network with, and all of that, and we appreciate all those people in our lives. But talk to the parent right now that maybe just found out that they are going to be the parent to a special needs child. It doesn't have to be trisomy 13. It doesn't have to be XQ28 duplication that we went through. But there may be a parent listening to this that just found out that they're going to give birth to a special needs child, and nobody ever said it was going to be easy, but nobody ever said it was going to be this hard either. And just in the couple of minutes that we've got left, just talk to them real quick and give them some encouragement.
So this was not planned. I found this really quickly on my computer while you said it. My wife really quickly in this whole journey found a poem. It's not a poem. It's this short little story called Welcome to Holland. Have you ever heard of it?
I don't think I have. Not by title, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a woman named Emily Kingsley, and she wrote this, and she said, when you're going to have a baby, it's like planning a fabulous, I'm just kind of paraphrasing as I kind of read it. She says it's like going on this fabulous trip. You're going to Italy, you buy all the guidebooks, you make all the plans, you're going to go to the Colosseum, you're going to see Michelangelo's David, you're going to do all the things. And the stewardess comes in several hours after the plane lands and says, welcome to Holland. And you say, Holland? What do you mean Holland? I signed up for Italy. I'm supposed to be in Italy all my life. I've dreamed of going to Italy. I've got all these guidebooks. I've made all the plans. I've done all the right things. But you're in Holland. And she says the important thing is they haven't taken you to a horrible, disgusting, filthy place full of pestilence and famine and disease. It's just a different place. You go out and you buy new guidebooks. You learn a whole new language. You meet people you didn't know you would ever meet. It's slower paced than Italy. It's less flashy than Italy. But after you have time to look around, you notice the windmills and the tulips, and there's no Michelangelo, but there's a Rembrandt, and it has its own merits, and it's a really beautiful little short story. But that is it. Like it's just that initial shock of you're just like everything was planned. That's just not why us. That's the only time I can remember yelling at God in my life was. And I yelled at God about her cleft palate. I didn't even know about trisomy 13 yet. By the time I got to trisomy 13, I was better. I was worried about somebody laughing at her on the playground and not thinking she was pretty. And I remember driving and yelling at God. And so you have that shock, but you just kind of referenced it. And Nora Rose's journey, I hate to plug. I don't have Facebook. I don't have social media. And if it was up to me, we wouldn't. And neither would Nora. And anybody that listens to this that's Nora's Facebook is going to hate me for saying that. But Katie has a wonderful ministry through it. and
Yeah.
Nora Rose's journey. So you know that's a plug that I'm not doing for any reason other than than if you're listening, because I wish it didn't exist, but it's wonderful. And Katie has documented our whole journey, and the merit to that, sincerely, is that, like, Katie has met. We have talked on the phone to people from all over the place.
Yeah.
Reach out. That was what changed our life. We found a girl in Atlanta who was also named Nora. She was also named Nora, and she had trisomy 13 and was like 4, and we found her when Katie was on Facebook, So just reaching out, people that are in those shoes that have been there before are never annoyed when you ask them to talk about it. And when you have questions, it's just not a thing. So yeah, I mean, and the organizations are great. There's an organization called SOFT that deals with trisomy specifically, but find a person, like find a couple that, that you can just talk to. I think that helps.
Is there a way, if somebody was on Nora's page, to reach out to you guys?
Yeah, just message the page. So most everybody Katie's met, Nora's page is like a page. I mean, I don't know how to say that. But, it's not a personal profile. It's a, and so, if you message it, Katie will see it. And that's the way she's communicated with most people that she's talked to about it.
Good deal. I wish we had a couple hours, because there's so many questions and so many things about Nora that folks I know would want to hear. They can fill in a lot of those blanks by going to her page. One thing I did want to ask you before we get out of here, with Nora not being able to talk and everything going on, how do you tell when she is happy?
She smiles. I remember the first time Nora smiled, it was a Sunday morning, and Katie and I were ecstatic. And it was the first time. I'm a big philosophy person. I love thinking about thinking. And I just had this moment of like, that's not a behavior humans see and then do. Like, you don't smile because you saw somebody smile growing up and you realize that was how you conveyed happiness. They just come from inside. So Nora's never seen anybody smile, but she smiles. She laughs when she hears 5 speckled frogs in episode 1 of Little Baby Bone on Netflix. She laughs every time. The hardest thing about Nora in church service is not her being sad. When Nora's sad, it's easily fixed. When Nora's happy, she will just gutturally laugh. You can't stop her, and you have to roll her outside because So she's very. I mean, she can pull up and cruise along things and walk on her legs a little bit. She's very vocal and active. She goes to school now every day of the week. Stays the whole day with her brother Rhett. They're both in kindergarten. So
that's awesome.
I mean,
that's awesome.
Lesson.
Well, my hat's off to you guys. Just being on the outside looking in, I've seen the care and the work that you and Katie have put into making Nora's life valuable and making her just part of the journey and taking care of her and advocating for her. So my hat's off to you guys. And maybe I can get you guys back on here another time. Maybe I can get Katie on here and she can talk about her work with special needs kids, because I want to do that too.
She would be great. She's keeping 3 kids right now, or she'd be here tonight.
Well, we'll tag out and I'll talk to her next time, and you can babysit.
That'd be good. Yeah. That's all right.
Well, Jacob, thanks so much for being here. I know it's going to be a help to folks, and we'll put Nora's page in the show notes so folks can go to it and learn more, and maybe ask you some questions along the way. So appreciate you being here, buddy. Good to talk with you again. I hope y'all
good to see you.
Stay well. All right.
Hey, before we go, I want to thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. If you're the parent of a special needs child and wish to share your story with us, or you know someone we should talk with on the show, send an email to exceptionalstoriespodcast@gmail.com. I also want to invite you to follow us on our social media pages. You can find us on both Facebook and Instagram at Exceptional Stories Podcast. And lastly, if you found this podcast informative and you would like to keep it going, I encourage you to go to our website at www.exceptionalstoriespodcast.com and click on the support button on our homepage. Join us next week as we share another exceptional story.